I have learned a lot about roses this year. You guys know I've talked about it before. I was not a rose person before this. My only experiences with growing roses had been ones of frustration, diseases, or the plants just failing to even survive, much less thrive. Then along came Heirloom Roses when they approached me to sponsor the show last season. I agreed, thinking that it would be helpful information for you, my gardening friends. But at the end of the season, I went ahead and I ordered a rose bush for my beautiful container that my mom left behind for me when she moved. And I had such a great experience with that rose that I immediately approached Heirloom Roses to sponsor the show again this year. At the same time, I asked if they would agree to come on the show as a guest to talk to us about all things roses and why own root roses make such a difference in the growth and the health and overall survivability of their plants. So, today on Just Grow Something, we are talking to Robin Jennings of Heirloom Roses. You'll hear about the surprising way that the company got started, what it means to grow thousands of varieties of roses, and to run out of space for them all, how they decide what varieties to offer, and how they help you pick the best one for your growing conditions, and so much more. The whole vibe that I got was that they truly, truly love roses and they truly care about helping people beautify their space with roses and do it successfully. Let's dig in.
Hey, I'm Karen, and what started as a small backyard garden 20 years ago turned into a lifelong passion for growing food. Now, as a market farmer and horticulturist, I want to help you do the same. On this podcast, I am your friend in the garden, teaching evidence-based techniques to help you grow your favorites and build confidence in your own garden space. So grab your garden journal and a cup of coffee and get ready to just grow something.
So, Heirloom Roses is and always has been a family owned company. In fact, they've only ever been owned by two families, one of whom was a customer of the other. But the company didn't start out to be a premier rose grower and supplier. Like a lot of us who start businesses around our passions, Heirloom Roses started as a hobby.
Heirloom Roses started in the early 1970s. It was kind of a pet project of John Clements. So John and Louise Clements were the original founders of Heirloom Roses. He was an air traffic controller, and this is what he did in his spare time to kind of decompress from a very intense job. So they lived on just 5 acres out here in St. Paul, Oregon. We're about 20 minutes south of Portland. And John kind of bred roses and grew them. First, he just started growing miniatures and things like that, just playing around with them in his spare time. And then he's got really good at it and interested in it. And so Louise, who was super artistic, she painted a handmade sign and got a little storefront in Newburgh, which is just the next larger town, and started selling some of his roses that he was growing out of this little storefront. So that's kind of how it started. And then John actually had a heart attack unexpectedly and left air traffic controlling and dove headfirst into flowers. It's like a hobby that became lucrative, and he started propagating roses. And after he retired from air traffic control, they actually took a trip to Europe and they met David Austin. And he fell in love with David Austin roses and wanting to bring English style roses to the US because that wasn't really a big market here for that at that time.
So that trip to the UK and the meetup with David Austin was actually pretty fortuitous. If you don't know who David Austin was, he was a British rose breeder who came from a farming background. And his sister gave him a book for his 21st birthday called Old Garden Roses, and he just fell in love with them. I mean, this was 1940. I know that wouldn't be a super appreciated gift for most 21-year-olds these days, but it spurred David Austin into becoming like the premier rose breeder, partly because he came up with something new. Tea roses at the time were very popular, but he really loved those old roses and decided to combine the wide variety of colors and the repeat blooming that the tea roses had with the beauty and the fragrance of the old roses. And so David Austin Roses was born, and his first rose was in 1961, but it took like 10 years for the breeding process to be refined and for him to develop what we now consider to be an English rose.
And he bred, I think it was over 100 roses in his time. And so that was really exciting. He started, and they had a serendipitous visit from a neighbor who asked if they wanted to buy an additional 25 acres. And so they did. And so we still are at the same property where they raised their kids and the same house, and we still eat lunch in the same kitchen that she fed her children in.
Heirloom Roses has had a very long-standing relationship with David Austin Roses, and a pretty unique one at that.
Yeah, we've done roses for a very long time. We are the only nursery in the U.S. that it has license to propagate David Austin roses. Everyone else who sells David Austin, get them from David Austin. We grow our own David Austins.
But it's not just David Austin's company they work with. Heirloom Roses features a lot of other pretty renowned breeders, too.
Yeah, I'm seeing a trend, too, in a lot of breeders that they're going, I say it's Griffith Buck style. Buck was a breeder up in the Midwest who was like, a plant got rain, and that's about it. Good luck to you. And if you didn't thrive, then you were out. So
that would be Dr. Griffith Buck. He was a professor and a horticulturist and a microbiologist at Iowa State University, and he worked with rose breeders around the world to develop disease-resistant varieties that were just as beautiful as those tea roses that everybody loved. But his approach was to grow the seedlings in a greenhouse for like 1 year, plant them out the second spring, and basically ignore them. The only attention they would get would be like water and cultivation. He did not spray for disease, none of that stuff. So if you survived, great. If not, well, it was back to the drawing board. That's one way to get pretty tough plants.
We're working with some really great hybridizers like Brad Jalbert in Canada. We always love Cortez roses, and we're bringing in these newer varieties to market.
But Heirloom Roses actually takes it one step further because they are dedicated to growing roses on their own roots.
We only sell own root roses, so that's kind of a differentiating factor for us. And we hand propagate them all here on site. My daughter's actually helping with propagation this summer for her summer job.
Okay, so why own root? Because I have a horticulture background, and we talk a lot in terms of like fruit production and vegetable production about grafting. And in that sense, the grafting is supposed to make a better product because you're taking the root stock of something that is much more robust, and then you are grafting on whatever fruit or vegetable you want to get from that. And that partnership is supposed to make the production better and the fruit stronger and the plant stronger. But we do know that if something happens to that tree, for example, and it happens, above or below, well, depending on where it happens, above or below that grafting point, like you have to be careful. Is the new growth coming from below the grafting point? Is it actually the fruit that you want to grow, or is it something else? But overall, we're told that that's a positive thing. Why are roses different in that respect?
Right. Well, I mean, grafting isn't terrible. It's manipulating the plant. We prefer to do things as much as nature intended it as possible. So with not grafting roses, using only own root, the plant is completely the same. So the root stock, the roots, the top of the plant, I just do this little weird hand action. It's all the same thing, right? So Ben often tells a story about running over a rose with a lawnmower, and because it was own root, it just came right back because it's the same plant. If you would have done that to a grafted rose, you're going to get Dr. Huey or some, Fortuna, some other sort of rootstock coming back. So we know that it makes the plants are much hardier in the long run because they're all the same plant. There's no risk of damage to the grafting point. They're not susceptible to winter damage. So a lot of those colder zones, 6, 5, 4, they're going to have trouble with freeze or things like that. You're not fighting root suckers. So there's only basal breaks. So it's all good stuff coming. When you see a new basal break coming out of the ground, it's super exciting. I think it was last year, Ben was out walking the stock fields, and we had a basal break off of one of our mother plants, and it had a bloom on it. It was like this tall with a bloom right at the tip. Like, it was gorgeous. And just like, that's why we love basal breaks, is because it's the actual plant you want, and it's making a really full, nicely shaped plant.
Will you define what a basal break is for the listeners who may not be really familiar with what that term is?
Yeah, basal break and suckers, those are like the two different words. Suckers, you don't want; basal breaks, you do. So it's just new growth coming up from the roots of the plant. And they're going to be the type of plant that is coming out of the roots. So if you've grafted, We call it a sucker because you don't actually want that. You want to cut it off. If it's a basal break, it's just new growth. That's the variety that you purchased.
And that's, I mean, and that's great too, because, you know, when you have a plant that has been grafted and you start to see that sucker growth from the bottom and you get all excited, oh, new growth. And then you realize, oh, no, that's not the plant that I want. I want the stuff that's up here. And so that can be kind of disappointing.
Yeah, so have you ever seen a rose out in the wild that has two different color blooms in it? It'll usually have like whatever, like a beautiful pink or a beautiful yellow, and then it'll have this red kind of plant in. That's the rootstock taking over. It's probably Dr. Huey rootstock. So we prefer to do things as natural as possible. So yeah, we're just all about own root.
So, I mean, you talked about the fact that they are hardier, and especially in those colder zones, 6.5, you know, and below. Just because they're on their own roots doesn't mean that they're just a standalone breed. And I'm assuming that there's a lot of hybridization that's going on in terms of being able to get varieties that do stand up to those colder temperatures and can thrive in all of those different zones. Can you talk a little bit about what it takes to hybridize a rose that can do that?
Yeah, so I mean, we work with some really great hybridizers who have been working with some of the old garden roses and then taking some of these newer roses and crossbreeding them to make more disease resistant, more hardy, gorgeous, heavily fragrant, whatever we can find, heavily ruffled blooms. We have so many options. With own root roses, if a rose isn't going to thrive on its own roots, like there are some plants, like you were talking about fruit trees and things that do better on grafted. If it's not going to thrive on its own roots, then we're not interested in it. It's not going to be for us. So we're not going to get a plant that needs a lot of intervention. We're really looking for those plants that are going to thrive on their own and last for decades.
In terms of production, though, I mean, I would think from a production standpoint, it would be a lot more efficient in terms of like from a company perspective to be able to produce roses more quickly by grafting them. I can imagine it's a very slow process to reproduce a rose on its own roots.
Yeah, it's a slower process for sure. But it's one that we're really committed to. So I think if you see like roses like in your big box stores or something like that that have been grafted, they look really big. They look quite huge and full. And then if you were to hold up a brand new heirloom rose next to that in a 1 gallon pot, which we do defoliate during shipment, which kind of shocks some people, but it helps the plant to thrive better when it gets out, and it'll flush out as soon as you take it out of the box. But when they hold up, this grafted plant next to an own root rose, they're like, this one looks so tiny. The own root rose looks tiny. But the root system was what's so robust. We have a video on our site where our owner takes out a grafted rose that we bought at a big box store and our roses, and he takes the grafted rose and he takes it out of the pot, and all the dirt falls and it's just roots. And then you take the own root rose out of the pot and the whole dirt stays together because of such a robust root system. So we recommend that as soon as you plant that own root rose, within a year or two of 2 seasons, it's going to be on par with your grafted roses that you purchased as far as size, but it's going to last a lot longer. It's going to be healthier in the long run. So it is a full production to be taking tiny little node cuttings and making little babies and growing them out. It's about 18 months from the time we first stick a plant to when it's shippable height. We have a branching requirement and a height requirement before we'll be able to ship any plants. So yeah, it takes a while. So when we run out of a variety, it's not like we can just be like, we'll make a new one and have them back on the site next week. It's an 18-month wait. So we are planning really far in advance. Like I'm already looking at roses with our team for 27, 28. We have to plan that far in advance so they have time to grow and flourish.
So that's some dedication to doing things the right way. Heirloom Roses is also very dedicated to helping us succeed with our roses. And that starts with being able to find the best rose for us. And not just what we want in a rose, right? Whether it's a climber or a bush or what kind of fragrance it has, but does it work for our area, for our growing conditions?
We have so many options in the rose world now. I think Heirloom, we have over 1,000 roses on our website. We have more than that on the property. I wish we could do more. We actually just run out of space. We have filled every square inch of our nursery and there is no more space to put another plant. And so, but there's so many roses to choose from. So you can actually go on our website and narrow down by how strong you want the fragrance to be, how tall you want the plant to be, the color you want it to be, and you'll get tons of selections. So we now actually have a feature in the top corner of our website or the top left of if you're on your iPhone, where you can set your zone and it'll make recommendations and say like, this is not good for your zone. We recommend this instead.
So, not only do they make it super easy for us to get the right rose, they want to be sure that it's healthy when we get it and that it stays that way.
And we also do testing on any plant that comes to our site. We make sure that we do viral screening on all of them. We're noticing in the nursery world as a whole, there's a lot of disease and things that are just sliding through, and we don't want to ever send out any plant that might have some sort of disease or infection. So we viral screen everything. And there's been really gorgeous, rare plants that we've got on site, and I've been so excited about them. And then our plant health team comes and says, it's got one little issue with it and we have to burn it. And I'm like, no. But I mean, that's what we have to do because we're so committed to the healthy quality of our plants.
Not only do they screen for things we definitely don't want in our roses, Heirloom Roses also helps us care about the things that make them thrive.
Yeah, well, you touched on a good point that you planted your rose in the fall. And if I have to plant a rose, I will always do it in the fall. I mean, you can plant anytime, really. Own root roses can be planted any time of year. You can plant them in the spring. You can plant them in July as long as you water them enough. You can plant them whenever. But fall for me is like the sweet spot. I'm in zone 8. That's a sweet spot for planting. I recommend almost every zone plant in the fall before your first frost, 6 weeks before your first frost, to let your roots get established, because then it gives that plant a head start in the spring. So that's why this last season you saw a lot of good growth on that rose this year, is because it was already established before winter hit, and so it was able to take off. Because we're choosing varieties that are really disease resistant, really hardy and strong, they're not fussy. They're not like these, your grandma's hybrid teas that were like crossbred and you had to baby them and give them all these, you know, I actually am really hard on my roses. We recommend when you plant your roses that you amend the soil a little bit. You give it some fish fertilizer the first year. I'm a big proponent of fish fertilizer. But I've had roses where I brought them home from the nursery just to test them, and I literally dig a hole and drop them in, and I'm like, good luck to you. And I mean, I did that with a rose called My Best Friend, and it is killing it. I pay that rose no attention, and it's just like happy to be here. Prolific blooming, and I give it fish fertilizer, but I don't do a whole lot. So roses, depending if you pick the right rose for the right zone, you're going to be successful. You can choose to ship your plant up to 8 months past your order date. So if you want to order a rose now and have it shipped in the spring, that's doable. Order date and shipping dates are two totally different things with us because we have that flexibility. If you're going to be buying our spring bulbs, though, that we're selling in this fall, those all ship automatically between October and December because you can plant them, up to a few weeks after the first frost, as long as the ground's not solid. So the bulbs ship differently, but the roses ship up to 8 months in advance. So you can just order whenever you find that something reaches your fancy, and then you can have it delivered when your garden's ready. But we do have a 1-year guarantee on our roses, so should something happen, should you forget to move the pot, or if you have a terrible freeze, we stand behind the product, and so we will replace your rose for free within the first year. So you can just call our customer service, and they respond so fast. I think the other day they were telling me they're down to like a 5-minute, 10-minute response time if you email them. So it's just an amazing team, and they get back to people so quickly.
All right, when we come back, I talked to Robin about one of the things that freaks most gardeners out when it comes to any perennial, but especially roses: pruning. It turns out I didn't need to be that worried. And Robin reveals her favorites, which is a pretty tough question considering where she works. That's up next. So I've had my rose bush since last fall, and I did just a little bit of pruning on it in the spring, but I was still worried that I would cut off too much or I'd do too little and somehow I would mess it up. It turns out that I didn't have to worry so much.
You have to prune them. Once a year I hack them down, and I'm not stressful about it. Like, I'm not super meticulous. I just hack them. We've got a couple videos on our site about pruning. So I think our top watched video is how to prune a climbing rose. Now, climbing roses are different. You have to prune those differently than a shrub rose. But for my shrub roses, I guess I kind of fast because I've done this for a while, but I just look for an outward facing, node a little bit, and I just cut above it on a slight angle and just go, 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 go. And so I can do a whole like massive 5-foot rose bush in just a couple minutes because I've kind of got the hang of it now. But even if you just I'm not recommending this, but even if you just took like the top off and just cut straight across, it's not going to harm the plant. In the spring, you'll see a little bit of dead wood or something that above that node that's not going to grow, and you can just reprune that. But don't overthink it. If it's a climber, you don't want to cut those main canes. Climbers will send out these long main canes, and you want to trellis those horizontally to allow for vertical growth going up. So we have a great video on that. So I'm a little bit more careful with my climbers because I want them to be like full. I've got a fence that I'm training climbers on all the way across. And so I just keep pulling those tall main canes out to the side and using our trellis ties to tie them up, and then they go upwards the next year. But for my shrubs, I'm taking out the dead, anything dead, I'm taking out that, or any of the branches that have expired, have been past their time, I take those out. I'm pruning for shape if it's getting too close to this way. I mean, I've got one climber that keeps trying to come outwards instead of going along the fence, so I just keep cutting those canes. I'm like, don't think, nope, go the other way. But their roses are really resilient, so just make sure you've got clean pruners and that you clean in between your plants. So if there happens to be any disease in your garden, you're not spreading it. And yeah, go for it.
And then I put Robin on the spot about which varieties are her favorites or the ones that she would recommend.
Favorites of mine right now. Oh gosh, I'm always in love with Cordes varieties. I just really appreciate those. Madame Anisette, I talk about her on almost every podcast I'm on. She is about, I think I planted her a few years ago, and within the first growing season, she was about 4 foot tall. So she is like a beast of a grower. Beautiful clusters of licorice scented blooms. She's like a creamy white. I just love her. She's super disease resistant. Everything around her can have aphids. She doesn't ever. She's great. So that one I love. William P.J. McCarthy, which is a one we just introduced from Brad this year. It's a beautiful pink. Even when they were only about 6 inches tall in the pot, they were blooming. Like they just wanted to bloom. It's such a great rose. And I'm actually surprised we still have a couple in stock, but William P.J. McCarthy is a really great one from Brad. Caramel Kiss is another one we introduced from Brad that's gorgeous. Someone at work said it smelled like a strawberry Jolly Rancher. So I like it when we get, when we stretch outside of the regular fragrance terms. It's kind of fun. We have another one coming down the line. And I was trying to ask everyone, what does this smell like? What does this smell like to you? Because I like to get other people's opinions on it. And we had a mix of people saying it smelled like a church lady's perfume or a fruity IPA. But there's just so much variety on our site. I just purchased, I guess, my latest rose purchase, because I have a lot of them. I purchased Francis Milan. So that's one, it's a beautiful, I mean, if you have never smelled that one, go to a rose garden anywhere. I'm sure they'll have it. It's a classic and it smells so great. Amazing Grace. My garden will never be without Amazing Grace. That probably is one of my top favorites right now. I just cut 5 blooms. I just tossed the bouquet earlier today. I cut 5 blooms and it filled a whole vase, and everyone in my house could smell it, even though it was just in the kitchen. So, I mean, that's a great one too.
And as if I needed any more convincing that I am going to become obsessed with collecting rose varieties, Heirloom Roses went and made the care of them even easier with their support team and all of their amendments.
You can just go on our site, set your zone. That's the most important thing when you get on our website, is set your zone, and it'll help you find roses that are perfect for your zone. So just pick what you love and try it. And if you have questions, contact our customer care team. They're so responsive. You can take a picture of your foliage if you're like, I don't know what this is, and send it in. And mint compost is probably our best selling amendment. It's so versatile. It keeps the roots cool. It's a beautiful dark color, so it looks great. It smothers the weeds, and it repels aphids and other insects. So it's just a win-win. I take a box home when I plant my roses, and I always dump a whole box around it. It's just great. It smells good too. So mint compost is an amazing option for keeping your roots cool and healthy and the plant thriving. What else do we have that I love? I use our fish fertilizer. We do have our own fish fertilizer. It's called Founders Fish Fertilizer. I use that on all my brand new 1-year plants. And even beyond that, I have a lot of dahlias, so all my dahlias get fish fertilizer every 3 weeks. I just dilute it in my watering can, and away I go, and everything gets fish. My dog loves it. I have to keep him inside because he follows me around when I use it. But that is just a tremendous dose of nitrogen and just health for the plant. So I love using that. And then I have our Boost and Bloom, which is a granular fertilizer that we use for roses that are 2 years or older. Don't use any granular fertilizer the first year on own root roses. Their roots are just too fine the first year, but they need that boost of vitamins. So that's why I use the fish fertilizer. But Boost and Bloom is great for years 2 and beyond. So I just sprinkle some of that, scratch into the soil, and away we go. So I thought I was afraid of roses too when I first started growing them. But they're probably one of my easiest plants. They're probably one of my easiest plants. And I have a lot of plants in my backyard. But roses, they're just so hardy and resilient. And I water them twice a week, and I do a deep water. And if it's hot, I might do a third. But they don't require much, and it's just constant reward. And we want people to be successful because it's kind of like the world is hard right now and things are tough. And there's a lot of solace and beauty in gardens. And there's a lot of joy in giving beauty. So roses are something you can give away. You can cut them and give all these bouquets away, and they will just keep blooming over and over again throughout the season, unless you picked a once bloomer. It's exciting to be able to be part of bringing joy back to the world and sharing beauty. And that's what we're all about, is, making this world beautiful one rose at a time.
Now you know why I wanted Heirloom Roses as a sponsor this year, but also wanted to have someone on the show to talk to all of us about their company and their roses and their commitment, because they're just passionate about all of it. I feel like it's rare sometimes to interact with a company and then make a purchase from them and then really feel like they have your success as a goal for them. Like, it goes beyond just, that email, hey, hope your purchase experience went well. Let us know if you can do anything, for you. And then getting nothing but sales emails from then on out. Heirloom Roses really, truly does want to help us beautify our spaces with the best roses, and I, for one, am now hooked. Until next time, my gardening friends, keep on cultivating that dream garden, and by all means, add some roses, and we'll talk again soon.